It's interesting, Stu, because it's almost like creating a bit of a paradigm shift in the way that we think about and look at nonprofits. And I used to hear when I would talk about nonprofits, there's there's certain reactions that I get. I am sometimes around multimillionaires and billionaires that are entrepreneurs, and when I would talk about nonprofits, it was almost as though it was a dirty word. Oh, nonprofits are always have their hand out. They're looking for charity. And that was the thing that really helped me to start reframing how I spoke about nonprofits. And initially, I thought, oh man, no one's going to want to hear me in the nonprofit space. They're going to shoo me away and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. But I've been an entrepreneur for years. And one thing that I realized very quickly was that there isn't much difference, but you have to be able to shift your mindset and think about yourself as an entrepreneur.
You're listening to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast. Here's your host, Stu Swineford.
Hey, Relish This listeners, this is Stu, and my guest today is Regeanie Corona, and she's the founder and CEO of Advancing the Seed, which is a really great organization for nonprofits that everyone should look into, both nonprofits and for-profits. She does coaching to help people really get an understanding of how to stay on track and how to fuel their growth and make sure that they are expanding their mission as much as possible and as quickly as possible. She has a really cool program called 10 in 30 days, which is this checklist, and you should go to 10in30days.com to check this one out. But it's a checklist on how to generate $10,000 worth of revenue in the first 30 days. And so listen to the show. Tons of great ideas here, as well as go check out 10in30days.com. I had a really good time talking to Regeanie today. I hope you enjoy the show. Here we go. Regeanie, how are you today?
I'm great, Stu. How are you?
I am doing very well. I just had a deer right outside my window, so hopefully he won't come back and surprise me again. But barring that, we should be in good shape. I'm really super excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well,
and
thanks.
I wish I were in Colorado with you. I have friends in Colorado. I have a business partner in Colorado, and I get up there every now and then to Fort Collins.
Oh, neat. I was just in Loveland earlier today, actually, which is just south of Fort Collins. Yeah. So that northern Colorado zone, it's really changing a lot, but it's a great place to be. I've lived in Colorado since I was 15 and have been visiting here since I was like 2 or something. So it's definitely a great place to call home. And it's a glorious day here today. Where are you located?
I am in Southern California, just about 12 miles outside of downtown Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. I had a friend he actually still has a place in Playa Vista, which is out kind of by the airport, out by Monterey Bay. Is that the right one? No,
not
Venice.
Quite,
it's south of Venice.
Venice, yeah. So it's out toward that Malibu area.
Yeah. So I get to go out there and visit him every once in a while. Nice. SoCal is a fun place to be as well.
It is. Usually very warm weather, but we don't get to experience seasons as much, which is sometimes a little disappointing for me.
No, it's funny. I was there on a business trip in January one time, and I was staying in Brentwood, and I decided to run down. There's a boulevard there, and so I decided to kind of quasi trail run down to the beach and back, and it was probably, I want to say it was 55 degrees that day, so a fairly cool day by LA standards. Yes. And of course I'm from Colorado and it's winter time here, and I was just like, oh, this is glorious, and I'm running along in my shorts and t-shirt, and I saw a pack of cyclists coming up Brentwood Boulevard there, and or that's not what it's called. Anyway, whatever that boulevard is that runs kind of east west, and they were in like full winter gear, and I was just laughing, like it's all perspective, man.
It
It's so
is.
funny.
Isn't that funny? It is all
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Well, we didn't hop on our podcast today to listen to me talk about my fun weather experiences. I'm really excited to have you on the show today because I know that you specialize in helping nonprofits really expand their mission and drive fundraising and thrive and survive, and that's exactly what this show's all about. So I'm very interested to hear about how you got started in the space and how you help nonprofits out.
Oh yeah, super excited to share that. I actually came out of an information technology career. I spent 25 years in the IT field, and 7 of those years toward the end were in cybersecurity and managing operations around a data center for Los Angeles County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, and it was something that I thought I loved until one day I literally woke up and felt like I was unfulfilled. And long story short, I came out of that career and went into, first of all, volunteering my time to
Okay.
help small nonprofits. I figured I just want to help. And I looked at how I could take my background and my expertise and knowledge and apply it to the nonprofit space. And I quickly started learning that for small and startup nonprofits, there were a lot of challenges that they were facing. And I wanted to help. And so I started providing services, initially pro bono services, which ultimately moved into the consulting space
Mm-hmm.
around how to become sustainable. And one of the first things that I recognized is that people were always asking this question: can I have a profit if I'm a nonprofit? And it's an interesting discussion, one that you've had on your podcast before, but it's such a huge discussion point because so many nonprofits don't think of themselves as businesses. And one of the things that I preach constantly, and others do as well, is that you are a business. You're
Right.
just a tax exempt business. And so it doesn't mean that you don't have to have business models and strategies in place to help you drive revenue consistently. Otherwise, like other businesses, you will experience negative cash flow and then you will fall into disarray. And so that was one of the things I got really excited about. How can I help in this area? And how can I use technology to help others drive towards revenue goals and automate some of the things that they're doing? So it's just a mixed bag of things that I was able to do, but all with this sort of end goal of helping small and startup nonprofits get closer to not just revenue, but consistent revenue month after month.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I know a lot of the things that we talk about on the show are differentiation of revenue streams, trying to find ways to add a product to the mix of ways that you can bring money in. Obviously grants and corporate sponsorships and individual donations, either micro or macro, all of those things come into play, and it's assembling all of that stuff and doing what's right for your organization that helps drive that revenue. And then I think that mindset shift is really important. And I'd love to hear more about how you've helped people kind of overcome that, that profit is a dirty word or kind of mentality, which certainly is prevalent in the nonprofit space.
It is prevalent in the nonprofit space. And, it's interesting when I work with leaders, part of the coaching that I have to do is actually mindset coaching. The first couple of sessions, we're actually focused on mindset versus, the business aspect of running your nonprofit, because as you've said, a lot of times leaders will think that profit is a bad word. It's a dirty word. Somehow you're not supposed to go out and look for ways to bring in not just the revenue that you need, but to actually create reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I try to always do is to remind any leader that's running a startup, or I always call them phase one nonprofits,
Mm-hmm.
because they're either just starting out or they've been there for a while, but they haven't figured out this piece of consistent revenue.
Yeah.
And those phase one leaders, they usually, they've been somehow taught to believe that only donations and grants are the way that they can bring in revenue. And
Mm-hmm.
so I usually start there. We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about small business, we talk about how a small business runs, and then we talk about social entrepreneurship. You'll hear me say that I'm a social entrepreneur versus a nonprofit leader. And that's because I like to look at what I do and others as nonprofit leaders do. It's we're just coming into a business and we are innovating in a way where we're bringing solutions to social problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have to generate revenue to support the mission, to support the work. Regular businesses have to do that as well. If we don't know who our market is, if we don't know who we are serving, actually in the nonprofit space, we have two primary customers. We have those that we're serving, but we also have those that are sponsors, donors,
Mm-hmm.
grantors, and they are part of our market as well. And understanding that helps us to be able to speak to them in a way where they can determine whether they align with what our mission and cause is. And I always work with leaders to help them understand that they are actually salespeople. I used to say, I'm not a salesperson. I hate sales. I don't do sales. But that's not true. We are selling all day long. The difference is we're selling a social impact mission
Right.
and everything that goes along with that. But we're still selling. So we have to understand what that language is, who we're selling to, and what are the markets that we're going to interact with, and what platforms or channels are we going to use to speak to them. And that's where it gets exciting for me, because technology comes into play with that, so you can
Right.
automate things.
Right. Well, facilitating the ability to scale, it requires additional revenue above and beyond, the team that you're employing, and so yeah, so helping leaders kind of figure that out, and I love the idea of the mindset shifts and how you just use different language to reframe something that may have kind of an itchy itchy connotation to people. Just kind of reframe it and rename it, and I love how you're doing that, particularly with social entrepreneur. I think that that's a fantastic way to just create a new kind of a relationship to what one is doing.
It's interesting, Stu, because it's almost like creating a bit of a paradigm shift in the way that we think about and look at nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to hear, when I would talk about nonprofits, there's certain reactions that I get. I am sometimes around multimillionaires and billionaires that are entrepreneurs. And when I would talk about nonprofits,
Mm-hmm.
it was almost as though it was a dirty word. Oh, that, nonprofits always have their hand out. They're looking for
Right.
charity. And that was the thing that really helped me to start reframing how I spoke about nonprofits. And initially, I thought, oh man, no one's going to want to hear me in the nonprofit space. They're going to shoo me away and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. But I've been an entrepreneur for years. And one thing that I realized very quickly was that there isn't much difference, but you have to be able to shift your mindset and think about yourself as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
You're running a small business, even thinking about when you look at multiple streams of income, how can I not just bring in donations and grants and sponsorships, but how can I bring in earned income?
Mm-hmm.
Because earned income is an important part of the puzzle, because earned income, generally, you can apply that anywhere in your organization. And I usually recommend that you put in an earned income stream so that you can apply it to your operational budget, because most grant funding opportunities, they want to they want to support programs, not operations, not overhead. But in order for us to function, we've got to pay for overhead. We've got to pay for salaries. We've got to pay for taxes, those fixed costs that may not be directly related to a program or project. So having earned income gives you the freedom to go out and do those things and pay for those things without worrying about it as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I'm on the board of a couple of different nonprofits, and one of them seeks out grants pretty regularly. Well, actually, both of them do. One of them's a little bit more adept at securing the grants than the other. But the one that has had success with grants, that income tends to be very you can't use it for very many things. Is there's a specific application that grant can be used for, and so yeah, being able to free up some of that revenue to allow you to be more nimble and take advantage of opportunities when they arise, as well as just be able to to grow. If you're barely covering your expenses, and maybe dumping everything back in, to the program, it doesn't afford you either that kind of safety net that's really handy to have during certain times of our lives, or be able to aggressively make capital investments or other other moves that would benefit the nonprofit and the mission that you're trying to fulfill.
Yes, those restricted funds, they're in nonprofit space, it's called restricted funds. And when those restricted funds come through, it makes it really difficult for the organization to have flexibility in how they use the funds. And I've actually had customers where they've gotten into trouble with those restricted funds because they needed the money so badly in other areas of their operations. And then they thought, I'll go back and replace it later with more income. And then they didn't get the more income in order to replace it. And then, they're on the hook for reporting to that grantor what they did with the funds. And I've actually seen some nonprofits get into trouble with that. So really looking at how to diversify your revenue streams becomes really important. And that's when we are running for-profit businesses, those are the things that we're looking at. How many streams of income can we have?
Right.
The other thing is looking at what are your skills and expertise in-house that you can actually create a program for that you charge a fee for service. And as long as it is related to the mission of your organization, then you can do that without getting taxed. If it's unrelated, then you get into this area of unrelated income and the IRS will tax you. But even in those cases, sometimes it's worth it to create that unrelated income business. Or actually, when you get into that, then you're looking at possibly starting another business under the umbrella of the nonprofit.
Right, right. I could see how that'd be really beneficial in order to kind of make, create that fee for service opportunity. And there certainly have been some people on the show that had that as a component of their businesses, of their nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the creative, other creative ways you've seen nonprofits add a revenue stream?
I have seen and have done this within my own organization. If you have any level of coaching within an organization where you're coaching, let's say, underserved kids or young adults, actually, we work with young adults quite a bit, then you can create coaching programs
Mm-hmm.
within your organization, and those coaching programs can help other individuals that need those coaching services,
Right.
but they have the ability to pay. I've also seen other individuals, I encourage this a lot, other leaders to look at digital marketing options.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you create a leadership summit and you invite other nonprofit leaders in your specific area of expertise in to speak, and there are individuals that will benefit from that, you can charge a fee for them to attend that summit. It can be a virtual summit, it can be an in-person summit. And that's a great way to bring in funding, but it's typically not something that nonprofits look at. But digital marketers and those with businesses online, that's what they do all day long, is create those types of programs.
Yeah, it's funny now that I'm thinking about some of the things that I've participated in, both through Relish Studio, my business, and a couple of the nonprofits that I'm involved with. It's like, oh yeah, I can see how, putting on that event, for example, the 1% for the Planet Summit, which is something that we've attended several times. Putting on that event becomes, there's a cost associated with it, but there's also a revenue stream there because you're charging for people to come and listen to all the great speakers that you've brought into the building.
Yes.
And then, we've also done training with another nonprofit organization that does trail building work. And that, there was a fee associated with that as well. I mean, it was very small, but it was still, there was some revenue coming in there just with them sharing that expertise. And in fact, we built Relish Studio built a website for Stepping Up Stewardship, which is a wing of the Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado, that's all about expanding that mission of trail building by selling the intellectual, the IP that VOC had built up over the years in terms of how to successfully run and manage a team of volunteers on a trail project. So those are a few ways that I've actually seen this in action, which is kind of cool. Now that you get me thinking about it, it's neat to think back about other ways that people can kind of inject revenue streams. Selling merchandise is certainly one that I'm sure is very successful particularly for larger nonprofits or nonprofits who have a kind of a strong following.
Yes, I do not remember the name of the organization, but there's an organization out of Colorado, I believe Denver, and it's called the Something Bean, and it's a
Women's Bean Project.
Yes, the Women's Bean Project,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And those are examples of social enterprise nonprofits where they are earning income, and they're also doing things like putting people to work with some of that income that they're earning, which is amazing.
Yeah. In fact, Tamara Ryan, who was she's the CEO of Women's Bean Project, was on the show back,
That's right.
in about December, I believe, is when we were able to chat. And they have a really cool program where they're helping women who are, who've been incarcerated,
Yes.
come out of the prison system and be able to integrate effectively, back into society. And they did this through this really amazing idea where I think the founder invested, I want to say it was like $5,000 in just dried beans.
Okay.
She had this idea and was like, well, I'll just go buy, however many tons of dried beans, $5,000 buys. And she just started this project back in the 80s. It's a really cool organization.
It is, and it's an amazing idea. And, you see more and more organizations that are starting like that. And that is where I believe social entrepreneurship comes in, because you're looking at creative and innovative ways to disrupt sort of the typical status quo of how nonprofits operate and what they do. You can also obviously have a social enterprise as a for-profit business. We see that all the time with companies like Tom's Shoes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, and you can always just commit to giving back,
yes.
like Tom's or any of the 1% for the Planet people out there.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned fee for service, and I spoke with Ryan O'Donohue, who's from First Descents, which is a organization here in the Denver area that they had a particularly strong ability to put together kind of adventure trips, and they were doing it for young adults with cancer to start, and then that kind of expanded into any kind of life-threatening illness, and they recognized that they have that ability to put together these adventure trips. And so they spun up a for-profit business that dumps all of its profits back into First Descents, that puts together adventure trips for people who want to go, do some crazy ski adventure or sailing adventure or whatever. And so that's another great example of a kind of an out of the box thinking around that fee for service piece.
That's pretty awesome. I think that it just opens up the opportunity to do so much more as an entity that wants to transform lives, make a difference in the planet, on the planet, and with people. When you have that flexibility of operating in the business world, I tend to lean towards having that social enterprise as a nonprofit, because then that allows you to sort of straddle the fence, because you can go after grants, you can continue to have your donor base and build your donor base, but then you also have that additional option of having the earned income, and that can come in multiple forms.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why they chose to set up, set things up the way that they did over at Stokebroker, but they certainly have the opportunity to tap into. These are very expensive adventure vacations. And I'm sure that during those vacations, they're very much talking about First Descents and getting additional donations to those programs. So it's just a really neat way to kind of approach it. I love the creative thinking that goes into some of these things. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I love it too. I can just sit and listen to those kinds of stories and testimonials for hours, and I just get excited because there's so much possibility. And you have so many individuals out there that have these ideas and that want to help others, and they're not exactly sure how to do it. And sometimes this is the answer. You can combine your passion and your experience with wanting to make a difference in the world and have a greater impact with business and take it into the marketplace. And you can do some amazing things.
Yeah, for sure. I know before we started recording today, you were talking about your program that you have kind of an approach to really kickstart people's not only immediate fundraising, but enable them to kind of turn that switch on and create recurring fundraising opportunities. What are some of the things that you take people through in order to discover how to start generating? I think you mentioned, $10,000 in the first some period of time. What does that program look like?
We call it 10K in 30 days. And it was something that was birthed out of my own challenge with my own organization. I started my organization, Advancing the Seed, in 2015. And we actually started serving individuals in January of 2016. And I never intended to actually run the organization. It was my goal to sit on the board and to support it, to be a champion, and to help fundraise for it. And I hired other individuals, and they were great individuals. They were just the wrong individuals to help move the organization forward. So there was an initial investment that my husband and I made into the organization, and the burn rate each month was pretty high with staff. And before we knew it, that the investment dwindled. And I woke up one morning and I saw it happening, but I was also out doing other things. I was consulting, and I kept thinking, well, this is going to fix itself, sort of. It was a really huge mistake early on. And within the first 12 months, literally, all of the investment had dwindled down to about $1,000. And everyone that was working for us said, we quit. There's no more money. We can't continue. And I found myself, it was myself and my sister was there helping. I found myself having to quickly figure out, how do I raise money to just keep things afloat and keep the doors open?
Right.
And I came up with this strategy to raise funds in 30 days. And it seemed simple to me. And we mapped it all out and we put it into play. And in about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3, we had raised a little over $12,000 actually.
Wow, that's great.
It was even a surprise to me, I admit. But there was a very strong key in the strategy that helped to exponentially grow the donations quickly. And so that's what I teach in 10K in 30 days. And, for your audience, anyone who might be interested, I have a checklist and I'd love to offer that to your audience.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I'm sure that'd be super, super helpful. There are a lot of people who, I think listen to the show and have been on the show who are in that phase 1, I think is what you called it. We would call it the build phase, probably. Yes. of their growth. Who are just, they're burning through what cash they may have put into the program, or they're just a little bit stuck. I know that I have a couple of people that I would love to share that link with. So thank you. I'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Awesome. The great thing about it is it's also very repeatable. And when you do it once, you realize, oh my gosh, first of all, this is not that difficult to do.
Right.
And second of all, I can do it. And when you succeed at doing it, it gives you the confidence to put it on repeat and do it over and over again. And you get a little more creative in how you do it, because this is really using donations and how to leverage other contributions with those donations to quickly get you to the goal. And we call it 10,000 in 30 days, but you could apply any number to it.
Mm-hmm.
You could make the number lower, or you can increase the goal, make it 20,000 in 30 days. And it really depends on how committed you are to following the steps and applying the strategies. But it's been proven over and over again. And the feedback that I always get is, oh my gosh, this is so easy. And now that you've said it, it almost seems like something I should have known. And
Right.
now I've done it and it worked. I can't wait to do it again. And that's what we want to hear, right? That's what we want to see.
Yeah, that's just fantastic. Is there a type of nonprofit that you find you work most effectively with in terms of a certain segment of the nonprofit space, or maybe it's the phase of their growth that they're in?
So I know I can tell you that I love to help those starting and small nonprofits get a jump on how to be successful and how to bring in consistent revenue. And I usually am able to do that with my online programs and my coaching program that I
Mm-hmm.
have that is a group coaching program. And then my goal is always to get them to the point where they're generating consistent revenue, they're growing, they're starting to look at scaling, and they're positioned to then work with me one-on-one through coaching and to help build them as a leader. In terms of industries, I have an affinity and a love for helping young adults and youth and anything related to training and knowledge and providing resources that will help those individuals get a leg up on how to go out and either start a career that can be upwardly mobile for them
Mm-hmm.
or start a business where they not only create opportunity for themselves, but then they begin to build something that can create jobs and opportunities for others. So my love is there for various reasons, and I love to work with organizations that are doing that kind of work. But
Right.
I've worked in public health and economic development, and I've worked with hospitals and local cities and county government. So I come from government. And so that's something that I tend to be able to help navigate very easily. So I'm sort of, I tend to be a little bit in, I don't want to say all over, but in multiple sectors, because I tend to also believe very heavily in collective impact. And there's the collective impact model that came out of Stanford
Mm-hmm.
University and their social innovation area. And it's really this space where you have multiple businesses, multiple sectors and industries that come together and they look at what are the commonalities between the things that they're trying to do individually.
Right.
And then how can they have collective impact, which is usually much bigger than what any of them can do individually, even if
Right.
they're a fairly big entity, and they can draw generally more funding to support that. And so because I come from that space of supporting collective impact, I think I tend to not see myself as working in one particular niche or industry as it relates to a type of organization.
Gotcha. Well, that's super helpful to know. I think it's funny. I've done, quite a bit of business type coaching over the years in terms of working on my own business, and it really is interesting when you dive in. It's like, well, this is applicable to all sorts of different businesses, and similarly, I think that a lot of times we, as entrepreneurs, I know one of the things that you tend to see in that space is people feel like they're the first person to come across this particular problem, and that they're all alone. And just knowing that there are solutions to this and that other people have navigated these same waters in the past can be just, that can be all that one needs to kind of overcome those challenges.
Absolutely.
So it's good to know that, how systematic I think a lot of this stuff can actually be.
It can be, and I think it's so important for nonprofit leaders to recognize that just like you have for-profit leaders who hire coaches
Hmm.
to help them accelerate and get to a goal faster, I think it's important for nonprofit leaders to recognize that they need the same thing. I know that I've worked with coaches, and I don't always work with coaches that seem to I guess, fit the norm. You know, if you're a nonprofit leader, you think, oh, okay, I need to hire a nonprofit coach.
Right.
Well, a nonprofit coach definitely is good because they can help you to get to the goals that you would like to get to specific to your nonprofit faster. But if you bring into that mix someone who is a for profit, maybe digital marketing coach, you might think,
Right.
I don't need that person. But the reality is, you do need that person
Right.
because they can bring perspectives that you never thought of that can be applied to the nonprofit space. And it goes back to what we've talked about almost the entire time is how do you get to consistent revenue month after month? Well, it's disrupting what has been the status quo or the
Right.
norm for nonprofits and how they do business and look outside of the box. And these are the ways that we begin to look outside of the box.
Right. That's fantastic. What are some of the most kind of common, I don't want to put a label on this, but some of the most common opportunity gaps or challenges that you see nonprofits kind of struggling with as they're kind of ramping things up and starting to get some traction? Are there things that a lot of people experience that you are like, I've seen that before and I know a way around that one?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple. There's a few, but there's a couple of big ones. One tends to be around finances and
Hmm.
budgeting. I see a lot of startup nonprofits make the mistake of not being regimented with their financials and not making sure that from the very beginning they're creating the financial foundation that they need to show that they are fiscally responsible so that they can then bring in the grants and the donations that they're looking for at higher levels. And so that means understanding the financial reports, making sure that you are generating financial reports, you're reviewing them, making sure that you understand how much it takes to run your business, the true cost of
Hmm.
running your business. Even if you don't have the funds to support the true cost, if you don't understand the true cost of running your business, it's very difficult to bring in the funds that you need so that
Right.
you can pay the salaries and cover the operational costs and all of those things. So that's one big area around budgeting and finance, which once you get that locked in, it gets you closer to actually bringing in the revenue that you need. The other thing that I see quite frequently is this fear of bringing in technology, either because you don't understand it or because you feel like you don't have the time to run it. Um, and I understand that, but I think that it's very important to start with some very basic things. And I had someone ask me recently, what do I think is one of the core items that you need? And besides something to manage your finances, I think that people who are running nonprofits also need to make sure that they've got a CRM or
Yeah.
a customer relationship management tool because it gives them so much ability to look at who they're interacting with, bringing more people into their mission and their cause, and how to, I don't want to get too technical, but how to segment their traffic and how to speak to each of those segments in the correct way that's going to get the response and the the action that you're looking for, because your call to action can be very specific to that segment. But you can't do any of that if you don't have some place to manage that.
Yeah.
And a CRM tool helps with that.
Yeah, usually it's it's half of a joke, but people ask about CRM tools, or we ask them what they're using, and they aren't using one, and they're trying to juggle multiple spreadsheets, and
Yes.
et cetera, and so the not completely joking joke that I that I tell is the best CRM tool is the one that you'll use,
Yes.
and so there are lots of opportunities and lots of options. We've actually had several people on the show who have CRM tools, but ultimately committing to leveraging even the most rudimentary power of one of those tools is it can really transform how you are able to stay on top of all of the moving parts that come with running any business, and including a nonprofit organization.
Yes, absolutely. And it is important to be able to capture those email addresses. And when you understand that piece, then you can begin to level up and graduate to things like getting the $10,000 Google Ads grant,
Mm-hmm.
which you can then leverage. It's for my organization. I'll be totally transparent and candid. When we first started, I thought, I'm a tech person. I know how to do this. I went out and got a Google Ads grant. And then, first of all, it was complicated trying to understand what to do with it.
Yeah.
And then, second of all, just being able to formulate the right verbiage to bring in the traffic that we were looking for, just didn't know how to do it. And ultimately, we lost that grant. Fast forward, we ended up being able to get that grant reactivated. But now we know what to do with it. And we've actually outsourced that work
Right.
so that someone who knows what they're doing is on top of it, and they're doing it for us. And we're bringing in traffic to the tune of 800 or 900 individuals a day on our website. And we're converting at 3.3%
Oh,
in terms.
that's great.
It is. It's huge. And I was so shocked. I was sharing this with the team recently. I was looking at the conversion numbers, and the norm. I was happy when we got to 1%, because that's
Right.
kind of the norm, 1 to 1.5%. And when we moved to 3.3 something percent, I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's really, I mean, aside from the management piece, which certainly there's either time or some investment there, it's a very beneficial program that I think many nonprofits fail to take advantage of. And it can be a real game changer, particularly in the early phases of one's organization, in terms of driving awareness and then hopefully repeat revenue.
Yes, absolutely. And it goes back to any type of grant, even something like the Google Ads grant, where it's not cash in hand, but
Mm-hmm.
it is it's equivalent to, it has about cash value. You really have to be ready. And if you're not ready to go after those opportunities, if they fall in your lap, you're not going to know what to do with them. And so, that creates greater stress, greater problems. And then you feel like, well, this just doesn't work. Everyone says it works, but it doesn't work. And it's really understanding the building blocks. Where do I start, and how do I continue to build up on that, so that I'm moving from startup to growth to then scaling?
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's the every journey begins with one step sort of mentality. And what I think people in general tend to fall into the trap of is looking at the entire the entire thing at once instead of all of the small little pieces that need to happen, and
Yes,
getting really caught up well, I have so much stuff to do. How am I going to get it all done? It's like, well, pick one piece of it and get that done, and then move on to the next piece. And it's challenging. I know that I find myself struggling with that all the time as well.
I do
So,
too.
so it's not uncommon. And there are always 1,000 things to do, or that you could be doing. But that's where, having a coach and planning and understanding where you're trying to go, and having someone hold you accountable to the most important things that you need to work on this week or month or quarter to get you there is, it can be really, really helpful for any entrepreneur out there, whether you're a purpose-driven entrepreneur or trying to make as much money as you want, or trying to do some real tangible good in the world. I have found coaching to be incredibly beneficial over, whether it's a big athletic goal that I'm shooting for, or a big, or even a small business goal. Having someone hold me accountable for the things I'm attempting to accomplish can be really super helpful.
It is. It's very helpful. It's been extremely helpful for me, and it really has helped me to think on a grander scale. And that's what we should be able to do as leaders. We should be able to define what we're good at, set goals where we are operating in our genius zone,
Mm-hmm.
delegate those things that we aren't good at or we shouldn't be spending our time on, and let others, whether it's volunteers or outsourced vendors, come in and be the team to do those things for us so that we can operate in our genius zone and so that we can move the vision forward. Because at the end of the day, that's what the leader of a nonprofit is there to do. And a coach can help you sometimes see what you can't yet see yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually brings us full circle back to the revenue discussion at the start of our conversation today. If you don't have those reserves, or the kind of predictable capacity to know that that revenue is going to be able to be generated, then you can't take advantage of things as effectively, even like hiring a coach. So it's really good to keep in mind, and be constantly assessing ways to help bring in additional additional monetary resources to help run your organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what new things are on tap for you? Is there anything exciting coming down the pike that you've seen in changes in ways to run organizations, or anything kind of unique that people should be aware of?
Yeah, something that's new for us at Advancing the Seed, we started out as an organization where we were doing training and development and coaching in person, primarily for young adults. And we partner with other entities that have workforce development programs.
Mm-hmm.
And we bring in an element of training and coaching that they may not have internally. And with the pandemic, like so many other businesses, we had to implement virtual solutions. Now, the benefit that we had was that we were already putting virtual solutions in place. So we have a learning management platform called the Success Learning Academy. And we are now really focusing our attention on how do we take quality training programs and sort of democratize uh, education, if you will. Not everyone has access to the funds to pay for a $500, $600 training course that could help to accelerate them in a job that would allow them to become more marketable, more upwardly mobile. And so we've been really shifting our focus around how do we build our virtual solutions in a way where they can be accessible by anyone around the globe,
Mm-hmm.
with the common denominator being a smartphone. Anyone who is under resourced, how can we make this available to them so that they have access to the same resources that, someone like you or myself would have access to? And while at the same time looking at how do we partner with other businesses to make that same training available as a platform for employees or individuals that they work with at a corporate level, and they're paying for access to the platform. And
Right.
and the part of that is when we discuss that with other corporations and we're selling that solution, it's they are not just buying a learning management system with corporate training material. They're actually becoming part of a greater solution to help serve young adults. And that is allowing us to actually partner with other companies and employ young adults as paid interns.
Okay.
So it becomes this ecosystem where we're now making money with the tool that we use to serve our demographic, our population. But then as a result of that, we're also now able to bring in individuals and give them on the job training, and pay them through internships.
Oh, that's amazing. I love the idea of ecosystems, and I use that kind of I guess it would be an analogy sort of a lot, just because we all live in an ever expanding ecosystem within an ecosystem within an ecosystem, and so being able to facilitate that kind of engagement that then escalates to other opportunities for people, I think is just a really cool way of building that program so that you can have the widest impact.
Yeah, it's exciting for me, and especially coming from a tech background, and a training background,
Yeah.
bringing those two things together. And so looking at how we can create learning paths that are in tech, that are in business and entrepreneurship, and making those available to individuals. And then looking at how we can build other programs around that, like accelerator programs
Mm-hmm.
and things that are a little more hands-on with an actual coach through group coaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's the space that we're beginning to operate in, and that we're having vision around. And how do we build that out and make it available to everyone?
Well, if there's one thing that, one thing interesting or good that's come out of all of the challenges that we've all been facing, is this additional level of comfort with tech and with being virtual, because it has allowed a number of organizations to really expand their reach dramatically, where they, initially ran very in-person type programs that required hands-on. A lot of people have gotten very creative about how to move that to a more virtual scenario or a more virtual setting. So it really delocalizes their reach. So where before they were either having to to travel to physically be someplace to help bring information or outreach, even nonprofits who have kind of that teaching component as part of their mission, they can expand that almost worldwide if that is actually in service of that mission.
Yes, and almost instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to a number of small nonprofits that have now expanded their services internationally because the limitations that they had doing in person have been lifted. There are different things that they're dealing with in trying to make sure that they're keeping their those people that are in their programs engaged, and that they are delivering programs in a way that still brings transformation. And that's the sort of, I don't want to call it a challenge, but that's the opportunity
Yeah.
that you face with virtually delivering programs. But besides that, you just open up a world of opportunity in who you can reach now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. And I had a guest on the show earlier this year, and I'm trying to find his BSCS. So they are a science learning organization that does teaching to other educators. So they come in and help provide teaching services to other educators. And in the past, they were very limited because they had to travel to places, and so the ability to afford them was really kind of constrained to very large school districts. So they were only able to reach urban areas, for example. And then as they kind of were forced to move to virtual, they recognized that opened up pretty much any school district to be able to access their programs and help their science teachers expand on their ability to bring great great services to the students. So it was just that move, that embrace of technology enabled them to expand to basically anywhere in the country. I think that they serve the US. So it's been pretty cool to see that kind of stuff take place and have people embrace that and really run with it.
It's really awesome. It also brings to mind the question of, why weren't we doing more of this before? Because it wasn't that we couldn't, it was that we had a social construct around how nonprofits were supposed to deliver services.
Yeah.
That limited our perspective of how we could deliver services.
Regeanie, I really have had a great time talking with you today. And how can people find out more about you and your coaching services and how you help nonprofits kind of supercharge their fundraising?
They can definitely go to my website at regeanie.com, REGEANIE.com. And you can find me. My handle is Regeanie on all the social media platforms. And then for that free checklist as a gift to your audience, they can go to 10 in, like the number 10, NIN 30 days.com.
Awesome. I'm going to add that to the show notes for sure. And along with ways to get in touch with you, because I think that you are just doing some really amazing things for nonprofits. And I'm excited to hear how people can get in touch and really help, either kickstart or supercharge their growth.
Yeah.
I like to end each show with an ask, and it's because I really love having conversations, but I also love taking action and want to inspire people to do that. And so the question I ask is, if you have finished listening to the show and had a good time, what would you want people to do after listening to the show to to have a better day or fuel their growth or make the world a better place?
I would love to see nonprofit leaders really sit down and create a list of everything that they can do to monetize either a product or a service, and make a commitment over the next 90 days to put in the effort to monetize one of those things off of the list, and to generate at least $1,000 from it.
I think that is a fantastic thing for anyone to do, because we all have something that we could actually just figure out how to sell, as opposed to either give away or keep to ourselves. So I would encourage everyone listening to this show to take that and go take some action. And Regeanie, thanks again so much for being on the show today. I had an amazing time talking with you, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stu. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Okay, take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
All right, there you have it. Another great episode of Relish This. Thanks for listening. If you would like to learn more about how to apply the audience engagement cycle to expand your organization's mission, there are two things you can do. Right now, you can go to missionuncomfortablebook.com to download a copy of my book. And while you're there, you can get your purpose-driven marketing score to see where you can unearth some gold for your organization. If you'd like to listen to back episodes of the show or sign up to be a guest, go to relishstudio.com/podcast. That's it for this week. I'll be back next week for another great episode of Relish This.